Well, for the time being, the biggest threat to your Second Amendment rights, guaranteed to your ancestors over 200 years ago, isn't actually lawmakers or kids from Parkland you see on cable television. It could be big corporations. Last month, Citigroup demanded that all its business partners restrict gun sales. Now, in the state of New York, the state comptroller, Thomas DiNapoli, has just sent a letter to Visa, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and 6 other financial companies saying they ought to explore the possibility of blocking credit card users from buying guns, ammunition, or firearms-related accessories. Meanwhile, some towns are acting as well. Deerfield, Illinois, north of Chicago, has just passed a ban on so-called assault weapons. Every person in the town is required to give up them, and those who don't will be fined $1,000 a day. Mark Steyn is an author and columnist and joins us tonight. So, Mark, both these stories are sort of a piece, and they're both interesting, but the second one first. If you were to, as Deerfield has, ban the possession of weapons that are currently held by law-abiding people, what would that look like? At some point, you'd have to go door to door, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think you do, and I would be surprised, even in the most liberal jurisdiction, if you can make the case that a $1,000 a day fine bears any relation to the offense. I don't think that will stand up if anybody's minded to contest that fine. And I would advise people to contest it too, because I think that is absolutely outrageous and is intended basically to intimidate people into giving up something which the day before yesterday was entirely lawful for them to have.
Ultimately, all of these conversations come down to force. You're going to have to start making people do things, law-abiding people, American citizens, things they don't want to do. And a lot of the pressure to control seems to be coming from corporate America, which is hard for some conservatives to get their heads around because they think, well, they're on our side, we're on their side, we're for capitalism. But things have changed, it seems like.
Well, I think that's what's interesting about the New York proposal. If you want to get rid of guns, if you want to curtail access to guns, do you do as John Paul Stevens, the former Supreme Court honcho, suggests, and repeal the Second Amendment? That's never going to happen. So instead, do you get corporations and lean on them to, in effect, do an end run round the Constitution? And if you look at what's happened with the way corporations, for example, are quite happy to collude in restricting freedom of expression. We've seen over the last year PayPal and other merchant processors quite happy to eliminate customers on ideological grounds. I think it's at the moment it's technically difficult. I mean, if you go into Walmart and use your MasterCard, they can't technically tell whether you're buying a couple of Twinkies and a blueberry muffin or a firearm. But once they can get past that hurdle so that a bell goes off and your normal credit card won't work when you buy a firearm, they will have gone a long way to denormalize gun ownership and Second Amendment rights. And that's why when they propose this stuff and people think it's crazy, you should always listen very carefully to what the left is telling you, because they mean it.
Exactly. And I've spent, 48 years not becoming a conspiracy-minded nut, a tinfoil hat guy. But I have to say I noticed that the same people who are pushing for social control using financial instruments like credit cards are the same ones calling for a cashless society where there will be no more currency and you'll be dependent upon credit cards.
No, and we're actually getting quite a ways towards that. I mean, checks are all but useless, and so effectively they will be saying, well, you can have a MasterCard or you can have a Visa card, but either way, you can't buy a gun with it. And that's intentional. These things are not accidental.
No, they're forms of social control. Mark Steyn will join us in a couple of segments because Hillary Clinton has claimed that she is the champion of the women's movement. And Mark has been thinking about that. Mark, we'll see you in just a minute. Thank you. George Soros has tens of billions of dollars, but his political causes have still received millions from you. Taxpayers are subsidizing George Soros' agenda. We'll tell you how that works. Stay tuned.